All right, now we're going to talk about pie charts, and pie charts are based on percentage. So you have to know the difference. You have to know that percent is out of 100. And so if I add up all the percentages from this pie chart, 20% plus 20% plus 25 plus 30% plus 15%, that should add up to 100%. If it didn't add up to 100%, then I wouldn't have a complete circle. And then degrees is how we measure angles. So if you remember from geometry class or whatever, you can have a right angle, and that's 90 degrees. So a circle goes all the way around, or you can think of it as 4 right angles. Completely turns in a full circle, so that's 360 degrees. And so it's important to keep in mind the difference between percent and degrees when you're working these problems. And not get them confused, and always make sure you have your percent sign on your percentages and your degrees sign on your angles, and that way you won't get mixed up. So we have an example here. It says a group of 120 children were asked to name their favorite flavor of ice cream, and the results are shown here. And they want us to make a pie chart out of these results. So the important thing to remember is that you need to find your percentages, but then you also need to find your angles to draw your pie chart. So we're going to start by finding the percent. Keep in mind that percent is out of 100, so I want to set up a proportion on how many kids picked strawberry, which was 22, out of the total number of students, which was 120 total kids, and then that would equal some percent out of 100. Okay, and if you remember how to solve this, you can cross multiply, or if you solve it a different method, your teacher might have called it butterfly method or baseball bat, whatever they called it when they taught you how to do this. But my work is going to say 120 times x equals 2200, because 100 times 22 is 2200, and then now to get the x by itself, I would divide by 120. So the strawberry would be 18.3%. So a little more than 18% of the students chose strawberry. So I'll do one more with you, raspberry. Raspberry would be 17 students out of the total 120. And once again, we're finding percent, so we're doing this out of 100. And so I'm going to multiply 120 times x equals 17 times 100, which would be 1700. And then to get the x by itself, I would divide both sides by 120. And so that is 14 point, let's round it to 0.2. And once again, we just found percentage, so I'm going to put my percent sign. Don't forget your symbols. So you guys go ahead and do the chocolate chip and the vanilla and figure out what percent of each the students picked. Okay, so hopefully you got the same answers as I did. Also, when you're finished, if these are all the flavors that they had to choose from, then we should check our work. And we can do that by adding these percentages up. And if we've done our work correctly, they should add up to 100%. Now I got exactly 100%, which is great. So I'm going to put a check that they added up to 100%. But if you got 100.01 or 100 or 99.9, that's really fine. That just tells you that you've rounded things off, and that's okay. You won't always get exactly 100% on the dot. Step 2 is we're going to find our angle. And your angle, once again, is these angles here we're going to use to measure how big each slice of pie should be. So we need to keep in mind that the total angles in a circle is 360. So we're going to set up the same proportion, except for strawberry, 22 students out of 120 picked it. And we want to know what angle that is in degrees out of our total degrees of the circle. And so we don't put a 100 here because it's not percent anymore. It's the total degrees, so we're going to use a 360 degrees here. So I'm still going to do cross multiplication. 22 times 360. So I cross multiplied, and now I'm going to get the x by itself by dividing each side by 120. So x equals 66, and remember we just found the angle, so that's degrees. So that would be less than a right angle. It would be less than a 90 degree. I'll do one more with you. And if you needed to, if let's say you didn't have this data up here, you just had the percent, I could even do, like I could do 14.2% here out of 100% equals x out of 360. So I can take my raw data out of my total and convert it to angles, or I can take my percent out of 100 and convert it to x out of 360. It should all be equivalent. But I'm going to go ahead, I don't like these decimals over here because I rounded them, so I'm going to use my raw data here. 17 students out of 120 picked Raspberry. I want to change that into the angle out of 360. I'm going to cross multiply. 120 times x equals 6,120, and then divide both sides by 120. So we get 51 degrees for Raspberry. Don't forget your degree sign. Okay, you guys try the chocolate and the vanilla. Okay, so hopefully you got the same answers I got. And now, once again, we want to check our work. If these are the only 4 options they had, then we want all of our degrees to go all the way around our pie chart, which means we need to fill up the entire circle with the degrees. So they should add up to 360. So we're going to check our math by making sure that all of my angles add up to 360 degrees. So yes, this adds up to 360, and now I've checked my work. Okay, so the next step is to draw a pie chart using this data. And if you look on the very back of your paper, you should have a pie chart, and we're going to use it to draw. And so you'll need to get your straight edge and your compass to, or your protractor to draw your angles. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is draw a radius of your circle. And it doesn't matter, you can draw it here, you can draw it here, it's just going to be your starting point. So you just use the straight edge and go from the center of your circle to the edge. And that'll be where we're going to start. So this is going to be 0 degrees right here. And so our first flavor is strawberry. And we're going to measure 66 degrees for strawberry. So now what you want to do, first of all, make sure that the words on the words are pointing the right way. So if your words are backwards, you have it upside down. So make sure you can read the words. And then you're going to put the center of your circle in this little hole right here. So put your center dot here and line up your radius that you just drew with your 0 for 0 degrees. And you could do it this way too, that's fine. And so here's 0 degrees. I'm going to go around until I hit 66. So here's 60, 65, and one more is 66, and make a little mark. So that's my 66 degrees right here. Now I can remove it and use the straight edge to draw my little slice of pie. And so now we've drawn, this is 66 degrees. This angle right here is 66 degrees. And this represented strawberry, which was 18.3% of the students. And it's also 18.3% of my circle. So as you're doing this, make sure you're labeling each little section as you go, because you have to keep in mind which one you left off on. So now my new 0 line is going to be this line. So I'm going to do the same thing. Put the hole in the center here. Line up my 0 on the new line. That's my 0 degrees now. And my next angle is 51 degrees. So I'm going to go from 0 around to 51. Make a little mark. And now I'm going to draw this one. Draw it to the edge there. And so this is 51 degrees, which was the raspberry flavor. and it is 14.2% of my circle. Now this line is going to be my 0 line. So I'm going to put this here, line it up with 0. And my next angle is 138. So this one's a little larger. So I'm going to go from 0 all the way around past 90 degrees, keep going to 138. Make a mark. And so this is my next section here. Draw a line from your straight edge out. And so this angle is 138 degrees, which is chocolate chip. Everybody likes chocolate chip. Which represents 38.3% of my circle. So keep in mind that 33% would be a third of the circle. So that it is just a little bit larger than 1/3 of the circle. And then since the only flavor left is my last flavor, vanilla, this should be 105 degrees. And I can measure that by lining this up with 0 and just double checking. Here's my 0, which means right here should be 105. And you guys can see that I'm a little off because mine's at 106, maybe even, no, mine is at, yeah, mine's at 106 or 107. So I'm just a tiny bit off kilter, but I'm very close to being perfectly accurate, so that's good. So I'm going to label this as 105 degrees. I'm going to label it as vanilla. And I'm also going to label it with my percentage, which was 29.2, so close to 30%. And there's my pie chart to represent example 1, the ice cream. So you guys are going to do example 2, which is types of tires on the back side on your other pie chart.